we're here to have a lot of fun, right? Jen and I have on our holiday hats. Mine belongs to my 6-year-old, so no judgment here. But guys, we're going to get into some fun conversation around the top 3 questions every buyer agent should know about their buyers. And gosh, it's been quite a year to be a buyer agent, hasn't it, Jen?
It has, Sarah. You and I have gotten to watch all of it unfold kind of across the country, right? That's that's one of the many benefits of being a MAPS coach, is that we get to see things as they evolve and we get to help in the training. And so I think you and I have an interesting perspective from where we sit, because we both run large buy-side businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has been certainly a strong market this year, and your buyers have to be mentally and financing strong to get to compete in today's market. And so this is just a good regroup. You and I thought this topic would be a good thing to launch into to get everybody prepared for the new year.
For another great year as buyer agents, right? In our wonderful industry. So let's kick things off, Jen. I know you very well, but I don't know that everyone on this call knows us as well as you and I know each other. So why don't you start out with telling us who you are, where you're from, all the good things about you, Jen. Go ahead.
Well, so Sarah, I am located in Springfield, Missouri. I am the CEO of Veris Network, formerly known as Holt Homes Group. So we just merged with another team. And so we will close right around 800 and some units this year. Next year, we're looking to hit 1,000, which is super exciting. Yeah. I started as a buyer's agent, though. So I was a buyer's agent on our team for 6 years and ran a buy-side business that it was myself, an executive assistant, an ISA, and 2 showing partners. And we closed consistently 225 units a year. And since then, I've had the opportunity to kind of take a leadership role on our team, and I get to pour into our buyers agents now, right? And so it's a super fun evolution that I've gotten to be part of. Our buy side this year, I think we'll close, if we're looking at Whole Homes Group numbers, somewhere around 300 buy sides, which is super exciting. I also am a one-on-one MAPS coach, and I co-coach the Mega Buyer Agent with you, my very good friend, Sarah Detmore. So Sarah, talk to me about you. Where are you located? Yeah. What team are you on?
So I am in Houston, Texas, where it is a sunny 80-degree Christmas Eve here in Houston, believe it or not. And I am with the Loken Group. So we are a mega team here in Houston out of the Platinum Market Center. We, just like Jen shared with kind of her interdependent team model, we run a very big team operation here in Houston. We have just around 90 members of our team. And of that 90, we have, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think we're 8 or 9 on our buyer team. So this year alone, we have had the opportunity of helping 450 families buy a home. So that's 450 buyer units alone, guys, which is kind of incredible in our market. Our team itself will close over 2,500 units this year with our big team. Yet, just like Jen shared, I joined my team as a buyer agent 9 years ago. And so through the evolution of our team, slowly got to a place where I am now the VP of our buyer agent team and am responsible for coaching, training, hiring, mentoring, all the things, pouring into our buyer team. So we're also serve as a co-coach of our MAPS group coaching program called the Mega Buyer Agent, which you guys will hear some more about here. We have a launch coming up on January 5th, which is 2 weeks from now, which is super exciting. But before we get into that, guys, we want to really talk through 3 of the most important questions we can ask our buyers, right? And, Jen, I think we already touched on how this has been a super crazy year for buyers, and something that you shared with me, I think back in January or February, as we kind of came out of our first experience with COVID in 2020, and just that navigating that market, is that it's not a seller's market, it's a skill set market. Right. And we know that when we focus on our language patterns and our conversations and just our skill set in that conversation piece of working with our buyers, that's one of our ways in which we can increase our production, because we're focusing on how we get our buyers to next by the conversations that we need to have through certain stages of the process. And a lot of that comes with asking the right questions and coming from curiosity. So let's kick this off, Jen. I recognize we have a time limit here. I know Carlos is here to keep us on track with time. And you and I love to talk about all the buyer things. So let's start with the first question. The first big question that every buyer agent should know, Jen, about their buyers is, what does purchasing a home mean for you or your family? So talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. And Sarah, if you want to forward into the next slide, I think when we look at this, notice that the question is a what question, not a why question. So Sarah referenced language patterns. And so what I know about buyers is quite a bit, right? This is my wheelhouse. When we ask why questions, we get why responses, right? And what I mean by that is it tends to be more of a defensive response, right? Their why questions are low level questions. And so if you're working towards having the great conversation that Sarah was referencing, we have to ask great questions. So we start with a what question, and what does purchasing a home mean for you or your family? What I know about questions are, the better the quality question, the better the quality conversation. And with the better the quality conversation, the higher your conversion is, guys. I promise you that your conversion rate is a direct correlation of the quality of conversations and the in-depth conversations you're having with your clients. Mm-hmm. So the first question is brought to you by Jordan Freed, another MAPS coach that we're very good friends with. And the question is, are they a vitamin buyer or an aspirin buyer? So I said this to somebody on my team, and my team said, an aspirin buyer, like they give you a headache? No, that's not what I mean. The buyer's not giving me a headache, okay? So what we mean by that are they buying a house as a vitamin buyer? What that means is, are they buying an enhancement house? Do they want a bigger home? Do they want a pool? Do they want a fireplace? Do they want land? Do they want to downsize? Why are they buying, right? What does it mean for them or their family? We can very quickly identify, is this an enhancement, which then sometimes can tie into some motivation issues or timeline issues, right? Or are they an aspirin buyer? An aspirin buyer means that they are relieving a pain point. Mm-hmm. It could be death, it could be divorce, it could be debt. Right? If we're looking at the 3Ds. So if you look at it and you look at your buyers that are in your pipeline, right? We have pipeline reports for our buyers, and we've got hopefully lots and lots of buyers that we're helping. Can you identify the true, what does it mean for their family? Is it truly an enhancement, or are we relieving a pain point? That will be a very clear indicator of what their motivation and timeline is, and how we tie things back to the why. Right? Their big why. What is motivating them? If we know this answer, it makes every other conversation with them a little bit simpler. Mm-hmm. The next question, Sarah, what would it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward? So if we've got a buyer, and we're going to assume that you guys are doing great strategy sessions. So Sarah and I like to call them strategy sessions instead of buyer consults. Mm-hmm. And we're strategizing with the buyer, and we're talking to them about what it means to be a buyer in this market. We're not calling it a seller's market. To them, we're calling it a strong market. We're competing in a strong market, right? It's not a seller's market. There's no possessiveness. So we want to talk to them. What would it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward? Sarah, why might we ask that? What would be the benefit of understanding what would make them feel comfortable?
Well, I go back to the bold law, right? Logic makes them think and emotion makes them act. And so when we use the words feel, right? What would it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward? That's another way, not only for us to hit on more of an emotional level with a buyer, but really isolate what might be holding them back from feeling comfortable, right? So we want to get clear on what those roadblocks might be. And it's kind of similar, guys, if we're setting an appointment. One question we might ask a buyer in setting an appointment is, great, I've got you down for Saturday at 2 p.m. I'm just curious, what might get in the way of you keeping that appointment? We want to find out what the potential roadblock might be, such that when we get to that point in the process or the conversation, we already know what, we can better forecast, what might show up during that conversation or throughout that process, and already have a way to overcome that objection or overcome that roadblock with the buyer based on what they said would have to happen for them to feel comfortable moving forward. And on the flip side of that, let's say, Jen, you're my buyer. Sorry if you'll heard my dog sneeze, but Jen, you're my buyer, and you said, what would it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward? So just answer that question for me as if you were my buyer.
Um, for me to feel comfortable moving forward, I would have to, the house has to be within my price range. I really don't want to stretch. I don't want to stretch on price.
Awesome. So other than price, what else would it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward with a home purchase?
The location, right? I want the location to be where I want it to be. That was one of the non-negotiables we talked about. Really, for me though, I think it really boils down to being within those parameters that we've set on price.
Okay. So Jen, when we can find you a great home that's in the parameters that you established and the price point that you feel comfortable with, is there any reason that you might not make an offer on that home?
I mean, only if I just don't like it.
Okay. No, you're being a difficult buyer, Jen. Be super agreeable right now.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm in training. Okay. No.
But Jen would be naturally super agreeable, right? So, and she would say, only the location and price range or what I need to feel comfortable moving forward. Awesome. So then when Jen and I are home shopping and we found her 3 homes that fit in that price range, in that location parameter, and if Jen at that point does push back and say, gosh, I just don't like them, that would be an opportunity for me as the agent to say, gosh, Jen, when we first met, we talked about how what it would take for you to feel comfortable moving forward would be homes in your price range and within these boundaries that we established. What's changed for you? So I can refer back to what Jen already said to me as what she would need to have happen to feel comfortable to move forward if we hit a roadblock in the actual process of moving forward.
So Sarah, I think a good point in that is, guys, typically when buyers get to this point, there's that old saying of buyers are liars. And Sarah, how do you feel about that saying?
What we often say, Jen, especially as we go through our coaching program together, it's the buyers are not liars, right? It's not a buyer problem. It's an agent problem. We've often missed something.
You've missed something, and you've typically missed motivation and timeline. It's not criteria, guys.
Yeah.
So what Sarah is saying is she's setting her buyer up to feel confident moving forward with the purchase. And if at some point they pull back, she's going to dig into that. So it typically is not going to be, I just don't like it. That might be the actual answer they give you. That's not, we've got to dig into it. That's the quality of the conversation. What don't you like about it, right? What's changed? What's happened, guys, as an agent that you have to recognize, it's not that they don't like the house. Something has changed in their motivation and or their timeline, and we're asking the incorrect questions. So the buyers are liars. Part of it is we're assuming that they're lying to us about their criteria. What it is we just haven't asked enough questions around their motivation and timeline. So the response I gave to Sarah is one that you will hear. And if we continued that role play, Sarah would dig in and figure out, had my job changed? Had my home situation changed? Had my financing changed? What else has happened that has caused me to just go cold on her? Or I just don't like it. There's something I'm uncomfortable with sharing. And so then Sarah, let's go into the next question. Why would we ask about the who?
This one I learned the hard way. And I think I learned the hard way many times because guys, have show of hands. I can only see a few of you on my screen, but everyone participate if you don't mind. Have you ever, not yet, no. Who else has ever had a buyer agreeable to all the things? And then they say, oh, well, my parents need to see the house before we can make an offer. Yep. John, I see you. Jen, you're raising your hand. Andy got a virtual hand, right? Mark, I see you raising your hand too. Good. So I'm not the only one. Because that does happen, right? Buyers have influence from parents, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Who else has had a buyer bring a dog to a showing? Anybody else? Because I have. Yeah, that was weird. So we want to know up front for 2 reasons, right? Who else will be influencing their home buying purchase? Who else might I need to get on the phone with in a group call to talk through some of the conversations that I need to have with these buyers, right? Is it first-time home buyers often have influence by their parents, and their parents likely haven't bought a house for 30 years. So that can be a lot of fun. So there's some kind of influence out there that our buyers likely have. And when we ask up front, that allows us the opportunity to know who we might have to communicate with throughout the process other than our buyer, depending on how impactful that third party influence might be. And then in addition to that, when it comes to the home showing, Because what I don't want to have happen ever again in my world is me show a couple houses to a buyer and then go, this house is perfect. I can't wait for my grandma to see it. And I'm like, where is your grandma right now? Why isn't your grandma here today? Because when we know who else is going to be there, we can make sure that when we get out there and see those 2 to 3 houses before we make an offer, everybody who wants to see the house is there at the same time. Jen, what did I miss there?
Nothing. I think that's exactly right. We're handling objections before they become objections. And it's a really easy question, right? It's a conversational tone. And Sarah says, you know what? I really want my dog to come to all showings. Okay, Sarah, what about your dog being there is important to you, right? Like, no, I'm being facetious on that, but we can ask them additional questions of, are they going to actually be decision makers, or it just makes you feel more comfortable?
And I love that Jonathan said in here, and the parents know it all. And sometimes they think they do, and that's okay. We can navigate that when we know that they're influential in the purchase process, right? So, awesome. So let's move on to the next question. Jen, you know what I thought was funny too is that I bet when some people read the title of this webinar, they were thinking the questions might be around the criteria. And I love that we're not talking criteria, because we just shared that that's really not the issue. The criteria is what it is.
Criteria is what it is. And somebody asked in the chat box, and number one, yes, this will be recorded and it will be sent out to you, and we'll hit questions at the end. But one of the questions was, when do you ask these questions? Guys, Sarah and I hold we hold the strategy session as probably the biggest piece of a buyer roadmap that you can have. So a majority of these questions are happening the first time we meet with them. Now, am I asking them to self-identify if they are an aspirin buyer or a vitamin buyer? No, I'm not. What I am asking them are questions for me to help determine what those things are. So we're having a load of conversation at the very first meeting. Yeah.
And you'll hear Jen and I throughout our group coaching program. I think the title could change from mega buyer agent to expectations, and that's setting expectations and managing expectations. So that's really all it is. It's telling people finding out what they want, telling them how they can get what they want when they work with you, and then following up and managing those expectations along the way. That's a really simple way, I think, to tie this with a bow. And we're going to move on to this second question, right? What does 5-star customer service look like for you? That's a question we actually want to ask our buyers. We want to know from them what their definition of a 5-star customer service looks like. So as a buyer agent with a large team, we as a team have a goal of providing a certain type of customer experience or client experience. And my filter on that client experience could look very different than my client's definition of a client experience. For any of you out there who are sourcing reviews from your clients, have you ever gotten a terrible review and been like, man, that was the best transaction ever? What did I miss? And if we didn't ask what they expected of us in that client experience, then how do we know what to deliver? So these are some fun questions to find out from your buyers too. And ways in which we can deliver on what their 5-star customer service could look like for them is finding out what their preferred method of communication is. Guys, this is a really easy one. We don't ever want to assume that our preferred method of communication is the client's preferred method of communication. A lot of things can get translated, guys, through text and through email. And believe it or not, there are people out there who still like to talk on the phone.
I'm not that person.
Talking on the phone could get you from point A to point B a little bit quicker, right? So just be mindful of that. And that's an okay question to ask, right? Jen, I want to make sure that I'm communicating with you in a way that feels best for you throughout, I don't know what happens in your world on a day-to-day basis. So do you prefer call, text, or email? Super simple question.
And the thing is if I said, Sarah, to you, I prefer a text message. My follow-up, or you said to me, Jen, I prefer a text message. I would say that I understand you're on the go. You're a busy mom of 3, you're in sales. I absolutely can appreciate that. Can I have your permission to call if it's something that I think deserves a phone call instead of a text message?
Absolutely.
Right. But I'm even going to follow up on that. Would you prefer a text message before a call? Because I would. Honestly, if somebody asked me that, I would want to say, that's great. I'm in 30-minute coaching calls all day long, right? I need to plan for that time for the conversation. Yeah. So it is, I think that's an impactful thing is these seem simple. And I promise you, most of you are not asking it.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
it's so easy for us to go, especially with the speed at which we've been moving all year long, right? If you are a buyer agent, or I mean anybody in real estate, and you're not tired right now, then come talk to me and tell me what you're doing. And it's because we just kind of knee jerk react, and we move so quick because we want to service the client at a high level. And oftentimes we think that jump and run is what the client expects to have happen, or what's going to make them have this client experience that we want them to have. And that might not always be the case. So we won't know unless we ask.
Yep.
Right. So Jen, I love this question too. When is your ideal time to look at homes? What might cause us to ask this question?
So I think I want for me, I want to know what their schedule looks like, right? Are they expecting to look nights and weekends? Are they expecting to look at lunch hours? What are they expecting? Because the next thing we talk about a lot is forward pacing. So if I have a client that can only look nights and weekends, I want to be prepared for that. If they're a right now buyer and they're pre-qualified and they have to go and they're an aspirin buyer and there is no other option than for them to find a house right now, they get their preferred time on my calendar. And so every week when I look at my calendar, I'm going to think, okay, Sarah said she could only look on Thursday nights. I'm going to put Sarah in my calendar Thursday evenings until I find her a home, right? So I want to know what the ideal time is because I'm going to time block it. Now, what I'm also going to say if Sarah says I can only look on Thursday nights from 6 to 7, I'm going to say, okay, Sarah, I completely understand that. And I want to make sure that this is the best possible that I'm the best possible fit for you. My concern is if we can only look Thursday nights from 6 to 7, there are going to be very few homes for us to look at. And my concern is those homes are not going to be available. If we were looking only from 6 to 7 on Thursdays, we really can only see homes that came on the market probably Thursday morning. It's very hard to prepare for that. Would there be any type of a lunch hour or a morning or something that you could go into work late so that you just have a couple of extra options? So I'm going to start to talk to Sarah then a little bit about the market. I'm setting expectations of if we can only look at this time, I have concerns about being able to get you into the best house at the best price, right? I also, though, if Sarah says I really can only look, in the evening, I would say to her, that's great, Sarah. I typically am going to work Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I have other commitments Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So in the event that we need to look at something comes on the market and potentially we need to look at something on a Wednesday evening, one of two things is going to happen. I can either have a showing agent from my team meet you there, or potentially if something happens, shows up on Wednesday morning, would there be any chance that we could look Wednesday on your lunch, right? We're asking this question for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
It creates a big conversation. It creates forward pacing, getting them on your calendar. Sarah's a right now buyer. I'm getting her on when I can. But second, it gives me an opportunity to talk about how quickly the market is moving so that Sarah is prepared for it.
Well, and Jen, I love this question too. And I appreciate that you shared. It really is a multi-level question because it embeds the idea of, gosh, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you might take off work to go to a doctor's appointment. What might hold you back from taking a half day so we can do some serious home shopping and get in these houses before the rest of the buyer pool does? What an opportunity, right? So when we have these conversations and ask these questions, it also gives us the opportunity to help the buyer maybe better understand how some of these things are a benefit to them as a buyer. Gosh, if I'm in a hot market and I know I've got to buy a house now, you can bet that I'm going to figure out how to take a day off of work to go home shopping and find a home before a weekend when every other buyer in my city is wanting to see the exact same house.
It also gets them used to the fact of we're not, Tammy is the one that said this, we're not Pop-Tarts, right?
Yep.
They're not going to call me and I'm going to pop out and go show a house.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're getting them into the habit of we're going to plan for this. This is on a calendar. This is scheduled. This is not reactionary. The reason to book something out in advance is so that we can be proactive, find multiple homes to look at, and get them under contract that much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of ties into the next question, right? Of we've asked what their preferred method of communication is. We've asked for their ideal time to look at homes and kind of talked through what scheduling the home tours could look like and how certain things could benefit them as a buyer in this market. We also want them to understand what what type of communication cadence they can expect from us. And I think that even sets up a great question of, gosh, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if they bought a home before, talk me through that experience. Talk me through what that looked like for you. Talk me through some things you liked, you didn't like. What am I finding out there, Jen, by asking that simple question of what their previous experience in the same kind of scenario looks like?
It's a very easy way to establish what that customer service looked like. Did they love it? Did they hate it? And why?
Right. If I find out that all the things that I'm thinking about doing or all the things that buyer hated about their last realtor, now I know what not to do.
Exactly right.
We have to be the chameleon of the transaction. That's the flexibility as a buyer agent, or any agent for that matter. It actually kind of helps us control the partnership in an interesting way. So this is a great thing to find out from your client is we want to know, gosh, let's find out before, if they have bought a house, talk me through what that experience looked like for you. What did you like? What did you not like? What did they expect to have happen this time around? Right. We have had clients before come to us and say, I want to call once a week. Don't care what you say to me, but I want to hear from you once a week. Mm-hmm. Awesome. I can do that. And your team or yourself, if you're a solo agent on this call, might already have some kind of communication cadence in place with your clients, which if you do that, that's great. With our team, we have a thing called Touch Me Tuesday, which sounds kind of weird, but it's every one of our clients in process gets a touch on Tuesday. Whether it's from our client experience manager, whether it's from their listing agent, their buyer agent, their ISA, their lender, right? Somebody involved in that transaction, whether it's a pending file or a buyer who's in process, can expect to hear from us on a Tuesday.
We call those non-update updates, right?
Yeah.
So a non-update update is, hey, Sarah, I was just thinking about you. Wanted to let you know I haven't seen anything new pop on the market. However, I did spend the morning calling around to for sale by owners that match your criteria. I also pulled a subdivision list, and I'm going to give them a call to see potentially if there's somebody that is willing to sell and maybe find you something off market. What I just said to Sarah is, I don't have anything for you. I have nothing to show you. Mm-hmm. However, I'm thinking about you and I'm working on it, right? It feels better.
Yeah, Jen, and what I love about that, guys, and I take this back to just ways in which I failed forward. Has anyone else ever had a time where a buyer's called you and been like, oh, Mark, you do nothing for me. I mean, you don't work for me at all. And Mark's like, I do this, and this. And we think that as we do these things, right, we're looking around to find inventory for our buyers. We're following up on other things. We're like, yeah, I'm doing all these things. And we assume that the buyer knows what we're doing. And unless we say, hey, Mr. Mrs. Buyer, here are some things that you can expect my team and I to do for you. We know that you're looking in a really niche part of our town and there's not a lot of inventory that's on the market right now. And we can ask some questions around things they might want to compromise on. I actually had this conversation yesterday. One of our buyers is adamant about being zoned to a certain elementary school and has to be in a certain price point. There is one home on the market right now that fits both of those criteria. And it's tenant occupied, so he can't buy it. So now I have the things he won't compromise on. He'll compromise on everything else. I even confirmed it. Carpet color, paint color, whatever, it doesn't matter. He has to have the price and the school. And so I shared with him, my ISA team can call around and see who might be interested in listing. I'll call the pending sales and see what might come back on the market. Here are the things that I'm going to do for you, and I'll update you. Well, not next Tuesday because I'll be off work, but the following Tuesday, you can hear from me and I'll share with you what I've done. And I even shared this, there's a small percentage of us, finding a home this way, but I'm just sharing with you, these are some other ways that my team and I will find homes for our buyers to buy when we know inventory is super low. And so he knows that something might not come out of it, but what he did appreciate was that we do other things besides activate an MLS search and let it run. And that kind of goes back to I love this question too, Jen. This is a script I heard you say, I think at Family Reunion back in like 2017, maybe, was I want my motivation to match your motivation.
Well, Sarah, I think that part of that is it gives us a very clear idea on their timeline. So if I say, Sarah, I want my motivation to match your motivation, what you're telling me is that you want to move to Springfield by, and I think we may get into this. Are we going to get into this? No.
I don't know, but we have, what time is this over, Carlos?
45. We got
okay.
time.
Great.
So I might say to you, Sarah, I want my motivation to match your motivation. And I know you want to be moving into Springfield by the beginning of February.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means to me is we really need to be under contract in the next week. That way we have an opportunity to do inspections. We have an opportunity to make sure all of your financing is in place and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So in the event that we need to be in Springfield, Missouri by the beginning of February, that means to me that every time a listing hits the market or we find an off-market property, I am calling you, I am texting you, I am sending a honing pigeon your way to make sure that you know that this property is available.
Mm-hmm.
And if Sarah says, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear from you that much, guess what Sarah just told me? She doesn't really want
to buy right now.
You don't want to buy right now. You don't want to be in Springfield by February 1. If Sarah's like, that sounds great. Also, can you also, send up a hot air balloon? I know Sarah's in, right? Yeah. So my motivation needs to match her motivation, which then has to match my communication. Yeah. So it's motivation and communication. If Sarah's a right now buyer, I'm talking to her every day until she's under contract. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, guys, if you hold a great strategy session and we have the ability to set the right expectations, should be very quickly from start to finish.
Yeah. Like how quick would you say, Jen? Just give us what you experience on your team when you guys operate that way with buyers that need to buy now.
Yep. If we're following all of the steps, if I met a buyer on Monday, I would forward pace them to showing them properties on Tuesday. They would write an offer on Tuesday. They would be under contract by Wednesday. We are on average still only showing 2 to 3 houses. Yeah. Well, there are only 2 to 3 houses on the market. And we're setting the correct expectations of how they have to compete to win. So we're still winning. Our buyer's agents are still winning 89% of the time in multiple offers because of the strategy session.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at, we've got a window of time with our buyers. What you and I know, Sarah, is the more houses you show a buyer, the less likely they believe that you are the agent to find them their home.
Yep.
Y'all think you're doing them a favor by becoming their friends and showing them 8 to 10 houses. You're not. They start to doubt your ability to negotiate for them and to find them the property that they want.
Well, and Jen, the reality is, in most cases, buyers ask to see their favorite homes first.
It's true.
Right? So after I've seen my favorite 1, 2, and 3, what else do I need to see if I've asked to see my favorite homes first? So, okay, we're getting off on a tangent here. So let's move on. I'm checking the clock and want to make sure that we stay on time and we leave time for questions because that's a fun part too. Oh, Jen, I love this question. For so many reasons. Guys, this is a fun question to ask your buyer is they tell you all the things that they want, all the reasons why they want the things that they want. And we come in here with a throat punch question and change the total trajectory of the conversation and say, gosh, Jen, that all sounds great. My team and I are here to be a resource for you to get you all those things. I've got to ask though, what's your backup plan? That's a hard question to ask sometimes, right? We want to be the one to give them all the things that they want. Yet, as a buyer agent, Jen, what's important about me knowing what their backup plan is?
It's another layer of asking the same motivation and timeline question, Sarah. If you and I are holding a strategy session, and I believe you and I are very similar in it, we spend 20% of our time on criteria and 80% of the time on motivation and timeline. Mm-hmm. We're asking similar questions. We're asking them in different ways so that we can make sure that we get the accurate answer from the buyer, right?
Right. So, I mean, we've gone through our strategy session and the buyer says, oh, I've got to be in Houston by February 1. Jen just gave some great examples on the motivation matching our motivation. And so a quick question we can ask the buyer, Jen, gosh, I mean, in the event that we don't find a home to purchase by February 1st in Houston, where might you stay?
Well, Sarah, I'm going to give you two options. The first one is when you want to hear. I don't have another option, Sarah. I've got to be there. I'm going to buy a house and
awesome.
Regardless of what's happening in the market, I have to be there by February 1 or my kids will not be in the school district that they need to be in for this.
Awesome, Jen. So I can definitely understand just based on what you said, or it is understandable. I can't understand. We'll get into that later. Yet understandable that that's important to you. My team and I can help you get there. We want our motivation to match your motivation, blah, 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 blah. It sounds like you might be homeless if we don't get you some in a place by February 1st.
Yes, I have
Right.
no backup plan.
Well, you can't come live with me. I've got too many kids, so let's find a home.
Right.
And then, so that's the one I want to hear. I want to hear that Jen has no backup, that she's got to find a place, and my team and I are here to help her figure that out. Now, Jen, I know what you're going to say next, I think. So let me ask you again, if we don't find a home to purchase by February 1st in Houston, where might you stay?
Oh, well, you know what? So my sister actually lives in Houston. She and her family live there, and she's got a basement. And she said I could stay there really like as long as I needed to. And so Cooper really wants to sleep on the blue pullout couch, and Caitlin's gonna sleep on the red pullout couch. And I've got an air mattress, so it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, so I knew we were going to do the couch with the basement and the thing. So that's what Jen's going to go
That's my
to.
go-to.
But guys, the point being is that Jen's backup option was so detailed that as the buyer agent, I might say, "Wow, it sounds like you've really thought this through. I love to hear that you have another option." And I might ask Jen some more questions around that backup plan, because when a buyer's backup plan is more detailed and specific, guys, that backup plan is likely their first plan. And buying a house has now become plan B.
Yep.
We're not going to say always, because we don't want to generalize it. Yet the more detailed, and that's why Jen did the blue couch and the red couch and the air mattress, and I can stay there as long as I want to, really not in a rush. If the right house pops on the market, guys, we've heard all these things before. That's kind of an indication to us to ask some more questions around really if Jen is a buyer in this market. And it's okay if she's not.
It's okay if I'm not. And Sarah, I think the thing that if I were to talk about the challenging market, I saw Scott, that is running a marathon with me, is on this call, and he made a comment and said his buyer's agents need therapy, or that he's providing therapy to them because they're struggling this year, right? It's a hard year. Guys, the reason it's a hard year for our buyer's agents is we're not showing the right buyers. What's happening is we have buyer agent fatigue because we're showing buyers that have a red couch, a blue couch, and a air mattress to stay on. And so we're running around with our hair on fire trying to find them a house because we believe them when they say that they want to be in Houston by February 1. We've not done any of the additional digging to figure out, is it really February 1, or is it potentially really towards the end of school, right? Where are we at? Either way, Sarah said it's totally cool. I just want to know, am I showing them houses, or am they on a follow-up plan? I don't care which, but I need to make sure that I understand what's most important to the client.
Yeah, and either we've shown the wrong buyer, and that's okay, guys. It happens. It does happen. Either we've shown buyers who really aren't buyers, or we haven't yet asked enough of the right questions and had more of the, I don't even want to call it a fierce conversation, but it kind of is, right? Having more of those very specific market conversations to find out really if the buyer is committed to doing what has to happen to get a home in today's market. And I know the markets are changing, right? And that's okay too. Yet, no matter the market, it always starts with our expectations and then the questions that we ask along the way. So, Jen, I think you touched on this before, right? And typically if a buyer sees more than 3 homes without making an offer, we've missed, she asked the question here, we missed criteria or timeline. And we kind of already answered this question is you've missed motivation, right? Motivation or time frame, because criteria is what it is. And I love the buyers are like, oh my gosh, I have so many things I want in my home. When we ask more questions, we really find out that what they think they want aren't things they actually need. And if they need to buy bad enough right now, buyers will compromise on stuff all day long. Perfect example, my buyers that closed on Monday. A month ago, they're like, we want land, at least an acre. We were having trouble finding it. And we had a really real conversation around what's our next option. They had a backup plan that was putting their family of 5 in like someone's horse trailer long-term. Turns out that wasn't what they wanted to do. And so they closed Monday on a new build that was not on an acre. So through some conversation, guys, we got clear on what they thought they wanted wasn't really what they needed. What they needed was more space for their kids. So it does happen, right? When we just ask more questions, it can change some of the things in the search. And then Jen, how do we keep our buyers engaged if the worst case scenario might play out?
I think, Sarah, I think it's because for us, it is, and I know we're getting close on time and I want to allow time for additional questions, but it's making sure that our energy level is high, right? That we're not so emotionally invested in it that our emotions are bleeding through. We're still the trained professional. We are still going to have backup plans for them, right? We are going to look at things that are off market. We're going to be proactive versus reactive. So keeping our buyers engaged, it means a very high level of communication and that we're setting the tone of that conversation, right? We're calling them, we're keeping them excited, we're keeping them moving forward, and we're giving them kind of what our roadmap is and what we're going to do next. I also think, guys, it is very it's very easy right now for us to carry around those frustrations. Guys, that's not our job. Our job is to be the fiduciary for them and to find them the best house at the best price. Yeah. So making sure that we're not playing into their emotions or creating any of the emotions and guiding them into next steps.
Definitely, Jen. And I thank you for keeping me on time here. Jen sent me a private message telling me to wrap it up. So guys, we do want to leave room for a couple of questions. I'll leave this slide up. This is just a quick overview of our group coaching program, the Mega Buyer Agent. We, of course, would love to have anyone and everyone join us for the next launch that starts January 5th. It's a 6-week program, 6 weeks of me and Jen talking about buyers. You get us for an hour instead of 45 minutes each week, which is great. Okay. The investment, guys, is just $198. And we talk through some pretty cool stuff that is undoubtedly a way to jumpstart your business for 2022. So you can scan the little QR code that I think I made the right way on this to get more information. But now let's open it up for a couple questions we can take here. Let's see who's first. What would be your advice if the buyer cannot compete in this competitive market? Ooh, Jen, that's a good one.
I think it is a good one, Kelly. I think when I'm talking to buyers, if they really genuinely cannot compete, the conversation is centered around two things. One being, if they can't compete now, we don't really know when they're going to be able to compete, right? So I'm still going to try and find them off-market options. Yep. I'm also going to talk to them about, are they okay with aged inventory, right? Even in today's market, there are homes that aren't selling. Would they make some compromises on some things so that they can get into a home that maybe with a little bit of sweat equity, that they could make more their personal home? So I would hesitate to just say we're not going to help them, but I wouldn't keep showing them houses that pop on the market, right? I wouldn't keep showing them the house that every other buyer wants. I would go with a different tactic, which would either be off-market properties or aged inventory.
Yeah, Jen, and I love that response. And Kelly, one thing that I know that our team has started doing when we can is even setting that expectation at that initial strategy session, right? There are two ways we can enter our market today. I wouldn't want someone to think that looking at aged inventory was only a plan B, because some buyers might want to go that direction right at the gate. A home that is sat on the market for a minute doesn't mean it's a bad house. It might have mismatched flooring or weird things that not every buyer wants to do right away. Yet to that point, right? What can we compromise on if the ultimate goal is getting a house in this price range? Heaven help the buyers right now that need closing costs paid by a seller. That's hard to find. So I think when you set those expectations up front of the two ways you can enter and approach the market, give the buyer the option. Power of choice is a pretty cool thing. Even if both options aren't great, when the buyer gets to pick, they feel like they're more in control. So.
And Ozzy asked the question, based on the changing motivation, do you ever hold another strategy session? Ozzy, we call it a regroup script.
Regroup.
We regroup with them and I will typically say, hey, Sarah, I feel like maybe I've missed something. We looked at 2 great houses today. I really believed you were going to feel comfortable making an offer on 123 Main Street. Can we talk about what I missed? Because I feel like I've done you a disservice. I feel like maybe I didn't ask enough questions in our initial strategy session. So Ozzy, it's just basically before we get 8 houses in, we're going to just regroup. And I'm probably doing that at every showing if they're not making an offer. And I'm also doing it if they're writing offers that aren't getting accepted. Hey, Sarah, I hate to call you. Unfortunately, the sellers picked another offer on 123 Main Street. Can you let's talk through what we think, we could do differently next time, right? I'm going to make Sarah part of my team as my client. I want her opinion, right? Why does she think we didn't win? And maybe what can we do differently?
Yeah. Last question we'll answer, Jen, is the resources we use to get contact information for off markets. So something super easy, Nancy, that I found to be helpful is when I identify a location that a buyer might want to buy in, I will pull a list in my MLS of the recently sold or pending or even active homes in that same neighborhood. And I'll call those agents individually and say, hey, I know this home just sold. What else do you have coming soon? What else do you know of that might be on the market soon in this same area? Because guys, when a listing agent puts their sign in a yard, they often get interest in that same neighborhood for other people who might want to sell. So that's what I found to be kind of the most immediate resource for finding some off markets in an area that that my buyer has expressed some interest in.
Yep. Awesome, everyone. Happy holidays. Have a wonderful
2 minutes over, Carlos. We did our best.
It's so much better than
he's used to us going like 30 minutes over. So thank you all for joining us. Again, join us for the Mega Buyer Agent. We'd love to see you guys starting January 5th. In the meantime, everybody, thank you again for your time today and have a wonderful, happy holiday. Hopefully you get some holiday weather in your market. It'll be sunny and 82 degrees on Christmas Day in Houston. So we're going to have the AC running full blast and it's going to be great. So Jen, I will see you at Family Reunion, I trust.
Yes, I will be there.
Awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everybody. Happy holidays.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.